one of the reasons we're able to have this wonderful facility, because she was able to have them work with me on, being able to get food and kind of keep the cost down, because, places aren't cheap. But I appreciate you and everything that you've done for women in weed in Oklahoma City. And now she's going to share her story about why she uses cannabis. So let's give the floor over to Kristen Ellis. Thank you so much, Kristen.
Thank you, and thank you to Gina as well for allowing me to come up and speak and share my story with you guys. I'm going to figure out this microphone. So here is my disclosure. I have general anxiety disorder, and so obviously that's why I use cannabis, and also it's helped me to be seizure-free now for 5 years. So that being, yes, I'm very excited. So that being said, I normally would go outside and medicate, but in an effort to make sure that I can get through this story without getting totally sidetracked and going off and talking about a million other things, I didn't. So thanks for bearing with me through this. Okay, so my journey with cannabis began in November of 2014 when I met my now husband, Blake. He had actually just began using himself, and he thought that it might help me with my general anxiety and some sleep issues that I was having. So we gave it a try. Let's reach over here. So we gave it a try to see if we thought that it would maybe help me with those things. And I definitely noticed a difference. I started noticing that I was sleeping better, that my anxiety was less, and ultimately this would lead to less seizures. I'm going to take this off, sorry, I'm hot.
I'm her husband, I can do that.
That better be my husband. Okay, so that all started back then. So whenever my first seizure, I was 2 years old, I stepped on a fishing hook, and stepping on that fishing hook isn't what caused the seizure. What caused the actual seizure was when they went to go take the fishing hook out of my foot, my anxiety just went through the roof, and I went into a seizure. So my parents realized at that time that we needed to do some research. We needed to figure out what was going on with these seizures, so they took me to the doctor. We determined that I was not epileptic. I wasn't having epileptic seizures. I was having what is called pseudo-seizures. So these were basically anxiety-induced seizures. That what was happening is that my brain would just go into overdrive, and I would have a seizure. So we knew we needed to do something about these to get them resolved. The doctors decided, can I have some water?
Yes, absolutely. And you have some.
Oh, I did have some right here.
Right now.
Okay. Cottonmouth. Yeah, I swear. Okay, sorry. I also want to say this is my first time sharing my story, so I'm really anxious. So. Sorry, I'm so nervous. Okay, so we realized that that was going to help with my seizures, but we weren't exactly sure how. Okay, so, what? Sure. Thank you. Okay, this will help. Okay, so this is helping. Okay, so we continued to have them. I continued to have these seizures throughout my childhood. Nothing seemed to stop them. Every time I would get hurt, I would somehow seem to go into and have a seizure. So we just couldn't figure out what was happening with them. We couldn't figure out how to get these stopped. Well, as I got older, I was 20 years old and I was living in Dallas and I was living by myself. I had had a small little procedure done. It was nothing big. The procedure went fine. It was no big deal. But whenever I started to get into the shower, I started thinking about it. And just like my anxiety does, just like right now, I start getting kind of worked up with it, and my brain just kind of goes into overdrive. So I knew that in that moment that I was starting to get kind of worked up with it. So after I had that procedure, I went to get in the shower, and I started thinking about kind of the conditioner hitting the spot. I started thinking about it, and my anxiety started spiking. A lot of times right before I have a seizure, I'll have about 20 seconds. And in that 20 seconds, I know I need to get to the floor. I learned this after having many seizures where I would fall and get more injured from the fall than the actual seizure itself. So I learned to recognize these things. I recognized that I needed to get on the ground so I didn't get injured. So I got out of the shower and I woke up on the floor in my bathroom that day. And I realized at 20 years old, I needed to do something else. I needed to find some more answers. I needed to figure out what I could do to put a stop to these seizures if I was going to be living alone. So I went back to the doctor and I talked to him more and more about these seizures, about why they were happening, what we could do to stop them. So his solution was to highly medicate me for my anxiety. His solution was to put me on 100 milligrams of Zoloft and to just highly medicate my anxiety so that whenever I'm in these situations that I wouldn't go into the seizure like I would have before. So I did that, and I did that for 10 years. I was on Zoloft for 10 years. And guess what, guys? It didn't stop the seizures. Now, as I got older, I got hurt less often, and so I wouldn't have so many seizures because I learned that I needed to just kind of avoid getting hurt. So I stopped having as many, but anytime I got hurt, and I'm telling you guys, I could have a paper cut, and that could have caused a seizure. The anxiety of it could have caused a seizure. So I knew that we needed to do something, and I knew that we needed to go back. So I stayed on it for all those years, 10 years of Zoloft, until I met my husband and we started using cannabis. So we used it, like I said, those first few years. And in that first 5 months of using it, like I said, we definitely noticed an improvement. Now, in April of 2015, I had what would be my last seizure to date. So in April of 2015, I had a root canal done. And the root canal went fine. The root canal was no problem. But whenever I got home, I started thinking about the root canal. I started thinking about the incision in my mouth. I started just thinking about it, and what happens with my anxiety, it just went over the top. So I have this theory that I can speak a seizure into existence. So I didn't want to tell my husband, hey babe, I think I'm starting to feel seizure-y. I told him, hey, I think I'm starting to feel nauseous. I think I need to go throw up, because a lot of times I'll start getting nauseous right before that happens. So I went to the bathroom and I started throwing up, and this has never happened, but in the middle of throwing up, I went into a seizure. Now, luckily, my husband was right there with me. Guys, we'd been dating 5 months. It was the most romantic situation you've ever seen. Me puking all over him, having a seizure. It was horrible. But he did decide to marry me, so I guess we got through it. But we realized at that point that we needed to do something else. We needed to figure this out. We needed to figure out a way to stop this. And it was helping. And so we knew that it was helping, but we could do more. So we got to digging. We got to digging and we got to digging, and we found that if I added a CBD to THC 1-to-1 oil daily in combination with consuming, that we felt like that was going to help. I'd read about it. I'd heard other people that had helped with their seizures, and so that's what I wanted to give it a try. So we tried it, and that has stopped them. It is the only thing that has stopped them, and I was able to quit Zoloft as well. So I am now off of that. I am now seizure-free to this day. So yes, thank you. It has taken a long time to get to this place, but to this day, I am now seizure-free because of this miracle little weed. So I knew that I wanted to find a way to work with this weed, work with this plant, share what this is. And so on Friday was my last day in my corporate position. So I've worked the last 15 years in human resources in corporate America, and Friday was my last day. Took my box and walked right out the door. I am so excited. Yes. So I founded my company, Grow Gift Co., and we do hemp floral arrangements. So at this point, I'm using hemp in all of my arrangements. I'm not using full spectrum at this point, but maybe one day. But at this point, I'm using hemp in all of my arrangements. I also do regular flower arrangements. I do all flowers and cannabis-inspired gifts. And so I've got a couple of those to give away, but I'm on Instagram. But I'd love to talk to you. I promise I won't be so weird when you come up and talk to me. But thanks for sticking with me, and thanks for sharing.